Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and this video today is going to be all about Warlock Pre-raid gearing. I guess you can call it BIS gearing. Basically what everyone's been asking about and requesting for the past 2-3 weeks or so. We're going to cover gearing for Destro, Demo, Affliction, Flask, Potions, Food, for the most part, and a general enchants. Basically everything you need to know. Now before we start that, we're also going to talk a little bit about raid bots and what it means to sim your own character, because my secondary stats, even though there are some that are better than others, generally for Destro, Demo, and Aff, could very well vary from yours. So if you know about Raidbots, you can skip ahead to the actual spreadsheet here, but I would encourage you to stick around and listen to this first part of the video. Now, any weak auras, profiles, or add-ons you see here can indeed be found on my Twitch page. If you want to swing by, hang out, ask any questions, feel free to do so anytime. So let's get right into it. So one of the biggest questions that I've been getting over the course of the past 2 weeks leading up to Shadowlands launch and this week of launch is there going to be a BIS list for pre-raid Castle Nathria? Now, that's a bit tough to say, or I guess it was tough to say, because technically Castle Nathria opens on December 8th, and Mythic Plus also opens this week. You have I believe a cap of 197 eye level in Mythic Plus, and then the week after, being the 15th, Mythic Castle Nathria opens, and the item level, I believe, is increased to 210 in Mythic Plus. However, if you are talking strictly the first 2 weeks here, there technically is a BIS list for Warlocks for each spec, because your item level, excuse me, in Mythic Zeros, is pretty much capped at 184 item level. Now, you can buy some BOEs like I did, but for this video and just sims, we left out the BOEs. Now, I do want to mention the sockets are indeed impactful. I did not factor in any sockets in these sims because, well, you know, they're RNG, even though you can put them on later on in the Maw. Right now, all we're looking at is Mythic Zero gear being the max eye level for the most part. Now, keep in mind, once again, when the raid opens, that also means the week after, you are getting your Mythic Plus chest from Ouroboros, which increases the item level cap even more. It makes things even harder to acquire. So, while there technically is a BIS list, and I've made 3, one for Destro, one for Demo, and one for Aff, it is not set in stone, because item level right now reigns supreme. Item level right now is hands down the most important thing you can get in your gear, but we'll get to that in a minute. So like I said, raidbots.com, this is hands down the best tool to min-max your character, because my character secondary stats are going to be different from yours. My needs are going to differ from yours. There will be general stats that are better for each spec, like mastery for Aff, haste for Demo, all of that, but my character is not your character. So the best thing you can do is go in game, download the SimCraft add-on, and type /simc, copy your character data, and bring it over to Raidbots. And there are a handful of things you can do here. Now, you can run a stat weight sim, for example, by just copying and pasting in your stat weights here and generating stat weights. Now, this won't take very long, and stat weight sims will differ for Affliction, Demo, and Destro. The important thing to note here, and the big thing to keep in mind, is that stat weight sims are misleading. They will show you what your stat weights are. And by the way, like I said, intellect is incredibly valuable right now. Stat weight sims are a tiny bit misleading. They're accurate, but for example here, you can see mastery is my most important secondary stat. So let's say I have haste enchants on these rings. So let's say I swap these haste enchants to mastery enchants, because mastery looks great. Well, if I ran this sim again, just doing that, trying to compensate for it, mastery is going to lose value here, and most likely haste or some other secondary stat, probably haste because we're swapping haste out, is going to become more valuable. So it's extremely hard trying to find the optimal set of gear by swapping around gems and enchants and different things, just running a stat weight sim. What you want to do to min-max your character to an actual absolute T is run a top gear sim. Take the actual info you had here in game, paste it in again, and it will take every single item that's in your bags and give you options to sim it. You can sim this, you can sim this, you can compare these two, compare these four against one another, and you can go down. This is the important part. You can go all the way down here. Check this box, replace existing gems and enchants. You can sim any enchant, anything you want in the game comparatively. If you want to sim haste versus mastery versus crit versus whatever else on your rings, select them, do it. This will give you the highest overall output. If you select haste and mastery here, it will sim. If I sim, 10 rings, for example, or 8 rings, it will sim haste on this ring, haste on this ring, haste and mastery, mastery, mastery. It will sim every possible combination in the world that you can possibly sim and give you the highest overall output. So you can see why it will vary a lot potentially from my character to yours. But that is the best way to sim your character. In the end, I don't know what you want, but this Raidbots does. So I can give you general tips and things, but for the most part, Raidbots is going to be where you want to be. Now, getting into the actual sims here, I ran a lot of sims today. I had to basically compile a profile of every single piece of dungeon or loot from dungeons in the game. It took like 5 hours to get everything done. I have a massive headache, but hopefully it's helpful to you guys. So I ran all those sims. As you can see, they are actually right here. Here is Destro, here is Affliction, and here is Demonology. This is relevant. These are the optimal pieces, but they're not incredibly easy to read. So the big thing, I updated my Shadowlands Warlock Google Doc, I suppose. Now we still have the Castle Nathria bosses, and in case you guys haven't seen this, it is indeed available. I'll have it in the video description, and probably pinned in the comment section as well. It describes Castle Nathria bosses, what specs are most likely going to be played on them. I'll change the actual talents here to numbers, I forgot. Basically what you're going to be doing: legendaries, notes, testing videos, links. I have links to all the testing footage from alpha and beta here, every single boss, if you want to check it out. Legendaries are here, conduits are here, but I added 3 slots. I added Aff Pre-raid BIS, Destro Pre-raid BIS, and Demonology Pre-raid BIS. Now, I ran these sims for about 5 hours, and they actually match, for the most part, what we've seen through, like, guide writers and things to put out, like, you know, gearing list. So, I will say, pulling up the sims briefly, item level reigns supreme. Here are the sims. I will also say that there is not a huge difference. You can see, like, there's a bit of a difference here disparity-wise, but once you go down, there's not a big difference in DPS. There's a 1 DPS difference here, 2 DPS, 3 DPS, 4 DPS. It's not that big. So, quite possibly, like, just with actual variance being a thing, if I ran this sim one time, comparing this neck to a very similar neck, comparing, let's say, Sin Stain Pendant to, like, I guess we're using it everywhere. Let's say comparing the Cloak of Enveloping Manifestations to Drape of Twisted Loyalties, there is a possibility that Cloak might, the Cloak of Enveloping Manifestations might sim higher in this sim than Drape, because there's not much that separates them at this low of an eye level, and with intellect being your main most wanted stat, being eye level. Regardless, though, getting into this, so I have run sims for Aff, Destro, and Demo. The conduit we used was actually Soul Eater. It was a consistent conduit across every spec. It is the Night Fae generic Covenant one that increases your soul rot damage. Now, these actual sims here, you can see Mastery, Internal Intellect, Internal Stats in your chest and bracers. You're going to want those pretty much regardless. Affliction wants Sinful Rev here. Destro has Sinful Rev. Demonology actually has Celestial Guidance due to the weird way that Sinful Rev doesn't work very well with Demo. You can see the ring enchant changing here to Haste again. You will indeed want to run your own sims also for these Haste enchants, or I guess your ring enchants. For the most part, these are going to be the same. Eternal Stats, Eternal Intellect, and pretty much the same weapon enchants as far as we know. But regardless, so the cool thing here, starting off with Affliction, Cowl of the Devoted General. I've added the item here. You can click the actual link and it will bring you to the Wowhead link, which is awesome to see the actual secondary stat breakdown, to see where it comes from, everything else. But I've also added the dungeon and I've added the boss. So you can see Cowl here, Sin Stain Pendant here, Reanimator's Mantle here, bang, 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 all the same. All from the, you know, different dungeons, different bosses, everything like that. This is the same for Affliction. Well, it's different, but it's the same setup, the same, you know, template for Aff, Destro, and Demo. By the way, hey, you like Spires, hopefully, if you're a Demonology. So I've added this. Hopefully it helps you guys out a lot. You can see here, trinkets are blank. So I will get the trinkets in a moment. Let's just talk about the rest of the actual spreadsheet, because trinkets are a bit of a nightmare. So I've added my own stat weights to every single category. Now, I know it's bright, boys. I'm sorry. Just stay with me for a little while. It's hurting my eyes, too. Affliction, Destro, and Demo. These are my own stat weights. The ones that I've simmed with my own character. It will not match your character. It is my character. But they still reflect certain secondary stats having strengths comparatively, you know, for Aff compared to Destro, compared to Demo. You can see, for the most part, what stats are a bit more valuable here. So this is Affliction. Intellect, once again, reigns supreme, which means item level, for the most part, is very strong. 1 point of Intellect is worth 2.55 value-wise compared to 1 point of Mastery. So the big thing here, you can see that Mastery and Haste, for the most part, are the front runners for Affliction. We've known this for a while. Mastery, dot value scaling, Raptor scaling, all of that. We've known this for the most part. You can see it reflected in the actual ring enchant sims here. As far as consumables go, we have Flask, Potion, Solo Food, Raid Food, Oils. You're going to use Shadow Core Oil everywhere. well, you'll see it in other sims here too. Basic intellect flask. So Potion of Phantom Fire is a bit different. So this does indeed scale, like damage-wise, proc-wise, whatever, with haste. So you have Dark Soul, you have other haste procs as Affliction, and you also have passive damage increases like Haunt, like Shadow's Embrace, that do indeed work with Potion of Phantom Fire, because it is a raw damage amp from those two abilities. It's not like a damage amp to your dots. It is a raw damage amp to any damage you deal to the target. So Phantom Fire gains a decent bit of value. If you can see here as well, if you consume this potion while your weapon is augmented with Shadow Core Oil, the additional damage is increased by 10%. Well, Shadow Core Oil is the only oil we use in the first place, so there you go. So Phantom Fire gains more value comparatively for Affliction, compared to Destro, and compared to Demonology. But consistently across the board, Intellect Flask, you can see the Intellect Potion being mentioned here for Destro and Demo. It's here for AF too, more so in multi-target, but it's still there. Solo food, you have Haste Mastery food here. Man, iridescent ravioli with applesauce. What have they done with these food names, by the way? This is actually insane. Like, it used to be like, what, Gulper Surprise or something? Like, what? They're getting fancy. Once again, you can click the links here to either or, the Crown Roast and the ravioli. It'll send you right to the Wowhead page to read over whatever you might want. Raid food, Feast of Gluttonous Hedonism. So this is the actual raid, I guess, feast that can be put down. This gives you 20 of your main stat. Once again, keep in mind the intellect is incredibly valuable compared to pretty much every other secondary stat in the game. So this is here on every single spec. If you want to reference it, for the most part, it's pretty much the same. Haste food here, haste food here. Let me actually make this a little bigger, but there you go. Haste food, intellect flask, intellect pots, Shadow Core Oil, and that is that. Now, getting back to the stat weights. As you can see, Affliction here, Mastery, Haste, Crit, Verse. If we go to Demonology, once again, Intellect is still pretty high. Haste is pretty high as well, which is also very similar to what Demonology typically wants. You have Mastery, Verse, and Crit relatively close to one another. Mastery edging it out by a tiny bit, but Haste is still there. Now, Intellect is not necessarily as powerful as Haste. You can see here, basically 1 to 2 versus a, 1 to 2.5 ratio, but it's still there. Even with Haste, Demo being a very Haste-heavy spec, Intellect is still there. It is still a very, very, very strong factor. So you might pull a 184, Haste Mastery piece, but if you have a 195 one with Verse and Crit on it, you're probably wearing the 195. But once again, Raidbots will tell you the best option for your own character. Looking at destruction in those stat weights, it's pretty interesting. Like we said on stream, Destro stat weights are pretty close to one another. Crit, Haste, Verse, and Mastery are all within, 0.06 of each other. Intellect's pretty big as well. This is actually really solid. This is good because it's not even like, all right, well, I have two similar item level pieces here and they're very close secondary stat wise. Destro, for the most part, just wants the highest eye level piece. It might feel better to cast with more Haste or more Mastery or bigger bolts or more Crit, bigger bolts, but it's pretty much the same thing across the board. Once again, you want to run your own sims, but this is pretty much accurate from what we've seen even like over the course of BFA, even in Legion. So, Destro secondary stats, very close. Affliction, Mastery, Haste, and then Demonology, Haste, and, well, Mastery and everything else is pretty similar. So, now getting into Trinkets, I guess you can see for the most part, Dungeon Breakdown here, Demo, Destro, AF, where you want to be. There's a lot of Demonology halls or Spires of Attention, by the way. Hopefully you like Spires, not me. Regardless, though, getting into Trinkets. So Trinkets are awkward right now. I have my Trinket sim link posted right here, or I guess posted right here. This is Demonology. We can click this. I'll use it for a reference. This is my own template. This is my own character on live right now. Once again, we're playing Soul Eater just for, universal. Everything's the same. Trinkets are in a really awkward spot right now because half of them are broken, some of them don't work, some of them aren't implemented in game or in Raidbots, and some of them aren't giving you the right amount of secondary stats. It's sort of a dumpster fire right now. But what we know, I can basically tell you all that I know about them. Big question, is Dark Moon deck good? It's okay. What it is a 200 eye level trinket with baseline intellect on it. Keep in mind, intellect, very strong. A lot of intellect comparatively to, this thing being 52. Now, you might be asking what this trinket does. Use ? It's a 3-minute cooldown, so it has to be pretty good. It is pretty good, potentially. So the on-use effect gives you a large amount of haste, verse, crit, or mastery if one of 5 other conditions aren't met. So the other conditions are, I gotta try the name off the top of my head. I believe it's, I might even be able to find it here. Let's see. I know one of them is like if a healer is below 20% mana, it gives them, here we go. If your HP or close allies HP is below 30, then it heals them. If a healer is low mana, it gives them mana. If you're CC'd, it removes the CC. If there's something related to being in danger, it spawns a taunting device. If a trinket can execute your target, it will deal execute damage. Now, this is actually a pretty substantial amount of damage from what I've heard. But the thing is, in a raid environment, whether you're in plus or raids, like in a progression environment, just in general, you can't always control if these are going to be a factor or not. Now, you can pop the trinket on pull and get a large secondary stat increase. I believe they said they were getting like, yeah, an insane amount of burst and mastery. It's a lot of secondary stat. But when it comes to progression or consistency, you know, consistent settings, you want to have that consistency. And this trinket doesn't always offer that. Now, you might get lucky or be able to use it properly and get insane stat increases. It does have baseline intellect on it. But in the end, you can't always control it. And it being on a 3-minute cooldown also makes it awkward too, compared to like, you know, a trinket on a 1.5-minute cooldown or a minute or 2 minutes, because if a fight duration is like 250-ish, you're getting 1 use on pull versus, you know, 2, almost 3, or, you know, potentially 2.5. It's an awkward trinket. It can be very, very good, but it reminds me a lot of the trinket in Crucible Storms, the one with the spear that it threw back at you. If you get hit by it, you got silenced, but it dealt a lot of damage. It reminds me of that. I don't want to say it's a trap, because it's not necessarily, but keep in mind that this sims very well, but so did the Harbinger trinket from Crucible Storms, and nobody really played it because it wasn't as good in reality as it was in Sims. There's a big difference when it comes to that stuff. Like, practicality of certain items, it has to be playable. Some things might seem amazing, but if they're not playable in progression, nobody's going to play them. So, looking at actual trinket sims here, this is Demonology. Now, the satchel and the actual infinitely divisible ooze bag, they've been trading back and forth. These are both baseline intellect trinkets. Keep that in mind compared to something like, let's see, the actual like PvP trinket here, baseline haste. Intellect is very, very strong. The other thing here, and the reason why these combinations are sort of simming so high, this is an unused trinket. This is an equipped trinket. This is an unused trinket. This is an equipped trinket. You don't have a whole lot of equipped trinkets in the game right now. Most trinkets that are good are on use. You have the cube, you have your Dark Moon deck, you have your ruby, you have your PvP trinkets, you have a bunch of other trinkets, both rubies, this and the other one that we have somewhere here down here, this thing. There are so many unused trinkets. This thing here, the cage. There are so many unused trinkets in game right now. And if you have double unused trinkets on, it can be good at certain times, but you incur a 20-second penalty on your other ones if you pop it. So you can't pop them in conjunction with one another. So it makes timing really awkward, which is why you see like the double unused sims here. Let's pull up a different spec, for example, because Demonology is a bit wonky here. Let's pull up a different sim, for example. Let's go to Affliction trinket sims, right? You'll notice that double unused trinkets, they're still up there. Like Imperial Ordnance, for example, is still up here, just due to the raw power level of this in Sims. You'll see Imperial Ordnance and Dark Moon deck are here because of the raw power. But just keep in mind, you're going to incur that 20-second penalty if you pop, if you pop one. So they might not line up perfect with your cooldowns. Looking here, you have Dark Moon deck and you have Satchel. Dark Moon deck, Imperial Ordnance. This trinket's very good for Affliction. It's baseline mastery with a huge intellect buff. It's also a 3-minute cooldown though, so there's more to it than meets the eye. If you don't necessarily kill the boss at a good time and barely like just miss the use of his trinket again, you're losing a lot of value. So TLDR, there are a lot of unused trinkets, even though the equipped trinkets might not seem as good, like a satchel or this thing, a random ooze or a thing that runs at a target and explodes. They're better than they seem. Baseline intellect and being an equipped trinket increase that a lot. So you might be asking, is Dark Moon deck good? Dark Moon deck is better for Affliction than it is for Demonology and Destruction. It's not like it's amazing, nothing insane here, but once again, it's baseline intellect, and the ability here says your enemies hit are 6 to 13% more likely to be critically hit by you. It lasts 10 seconds. This trinket's effect, and AoEs too, the actual like debuff, the crit like debuff AoEs. This trinket reminds me a lot of Blood of the Enemy. It's nowhere near as good, but it puts like a debuff on every target that you hit with it. And Affliction with cooldowns, even just without them, for the most part, can get all of your rapture value in that 10-second window. If you're pooling, you can dump in that 10-second window. Destro can't really do that because you have your Infernal for half a minute. Obviously, you can dump bolts in that window, but you're not getting all your value in that window. Demonology sort of can, but at the same time, it's the damage you deal. So if I'm reading this correctly, normally how that wording means like you, the player, not your tyrant, not your imps, not your dogs. It's you, the player. Your demon bolts, your shadow bolts, your implosion counts, which can be pretty OP in AoE with the trinket. Your implosion, your hand of Gul'dan splash damage. So this trinket, in my opinion, is better for Affliction than it is for Destro or Demo, but it's still nothing like amazing to me. I could be wrong in the long run. I don't necessarily think so. I believe it's just being propped up by the 61 intellect here and 200 eye level. But there's more to trinkets here than meets the eye. You can see Imperial Ordnance and Darkmoon Deck are both very good here. Keep that in mind. So moving along here, we have PvP trinkets. Now, this trinket seems pretty decent. It's equip trinket, baseline haste, primary stat proc. The weird thing about this trinket in game, it gives you 33 primary stat when it procs. We don't know if it's a bug or it's intended. There's been no blue post. There's been radio silence. It gives you 33 intellect and not 93. It's simming improperly here. We don't know if it's been reported. We don't know if it's a bug. We're not really sure. There's another trinket here that's similar to that. So the Unbound Changeling. This is another equip trinket with baseline intellect that says, it's actually the one from Mist of Tyrannus Scythe. It's the one that gives you baseline haste, mastery, crit, or any secondary stat. It's in this response right here. Your abilities have a chance to grant you X haste for 12 seconds. Baseline intellect with an equip effect. This can be really, really good. From what I've heard, this changes based off the food that you eat. You can sort of see it in the tooltip there. What I've also heard and confirmed through a friend is that this trinket is also giving you like half the stats that it says. It'll give you like 90 intellect or something, or 90 haste, I'm sorry. So we don't know if this is bugged, if it's intended, if it's not intended. No one seems to know what's going on. This could be a very good trinket for going into the raid. It's a baseline intellect trinket with good secondary stat proc and no weird like enemies running in, exploding and doing dumb garbage. It's just stats. It could be good. But on top of that, it's also not simming in Raidbots, so it doesn't sim the proc effect. All it's simming is a baseline intellect trinket. So keep that in mind as well. Number 9 on the list, this is also bugged. So trinkets are in a bit of an odd spot right now. You have to keep this in mind. You have to keep double on use in mind. You have to keep the added value of this in mind at a higher eye level. This is not simming properly. This is not either, and you're getting less stats from both of these trinkets. Also, you're going to have a higher item level on PvP trinkets when the mythic comes out. So there's a lot to take into account here. So TLDR, I left the spots blank for trinkets when it comes to Destro, Demo, and Aff. The sims here do indeed show them. Imperial Ordnance, Inscrutable Quantum Device for Affliction. Destro has Satchel and Quantum Device. Demonology has Satchel and Device. I will say once again, the device is solid if you can get, the right usage and the right uptime on it. If you get some stupid taunting mob that procs or somebody that gives healer mana back, like, you're not going to be very happy. Looking at destruction sims here, you see device, bag. You see double on use here. But if you go past the device, the highest combo you technically see here is bag. It's actually, is it bag? Yeah, it's bag and soul letting ruby. But very, very close behind that is bag being equipped and Darkmoon Deck Putrescence. So keep in mind the trinket might be a bit inflated. So your better combinations, as long as these are simming properly and until we get the other ones fixed. Soul letting ruby does indeed seem pretty solid. And I mean, Satchel's there too. But also, Darkmoon Deck is purchasable now. It's probably pretty cheap at this point. It's about a week into the servers being live. It's there. Oh, at the same time, this other equipped trinket gets very close too. Satchel and infinitely divisible ooze. They're both there. So it makes things hard to just figure out for trinkets. I once again, if I know anything, refigure anything out about these trinkets not giving full value or whatever, I'll let you guys know. But do I think Darkmoon Deck is amazing? No, I think it's fine. It's okay. It could be better. It's better for Aff. It's like sort of mediocre-ish, but we don't really have amazing combinations. I do like the Imperial Ordnance trinket. I think it's very good. It's a lot of intellect and a baseline amount of mastery. If I was looking to play Affliction, well, pulling up Affliction trinket sims here, Imperial Ordnance is very strong. Mastery, dot scaling, rapture scaling, all of that. Darkmoon Deck on use, rapture windows, everything else. And at the same time, You can pop the ordnance sort of before you actually go into like your dark lair or whatever, because it takes time for the actual orbs to get back to you, and then pop your Darkmoon trinket and go. I think this combination here actually has a lot of value. You might be a tiny bit late on like getting your Raptors in with this Darkmoon deck here, but you can probably line up for it. These two trinkets I think are pretty solid for AF, like combination wise. But keep in mind, there's also another PvP trinket, the badge. The badge gives baseline haste and primary stat on a 1 minute cooldown. A 1 minute cooldown is incredibly strong for Destro, for Demo, for AF, because it syncs with Dark Soul, it syncs with your Infernal, it syncs with your, well, it can sync with your Tyrant depending what you're doing. If you have Wilfrids for Demo or whatever, a 1 minute cooldown with a primary stat increase is very, very strong. Now, I don't know if this is simming properly or not. It seems like it's not, because chances are high the APLs aren't optimized for popping this around cooldowns, because it doesn't seem like it'd be this bad. But also, it's important to note, it'll be a higher eye level. I believe when Heroic comes out, I think you can upgrade it past 171, certainly when Mythic comes out. So this is why I haven't really been able to give a good answer on trinkets when it comes to live and things, because they're just in a weird spot. They're bugged and not working properly, and we just don't really know. So that's that. I left trinkets blank. Once again, you can look through all the trinket sims here, if you want. But putting all that aside, the gearing list is pretty much on point. If you run your own sims or took this profile and ran the sims again, you might get a tiny bit of variance looking at like ring combinations or maybe like a neck or a belt. But for the most part, this is pretty much on point. Now, once again, I left BOEs off the list here. So let's talk a tiny bit about them, the actual epic BOEs, and not weird Darkmoon deck trinkets. So when it comes to Warlocks and BOEs, there are a few that you can pick up potentially depending on how much gold you have and how much you really care. They are 190 eye level. The first one is this belt here. It's actually dropping in price like crazy, but it can have sockets on it. I got mine for 130,000 gold like 4 days ago. The thing is, this is a 6 eye level increase. It is crit and haste, which is really good, and there's a socket on it too, but it's only 190 eye level. Mythic Plus is going to be dropping, I believe, 197 the week the raid opens. So it's not incredibly impactful. If you can get one with a socket on it, okay, that's fine. That's solid. Go for it. But I wouldn't be too concerned about buying BOEs and truly min-maxing your character if you don't have a lot of gold or just aren't, really that invested in it. The belt is there, being crit and haste, solid. We also have a cloak with Verse Mastery on it. I don't love the secondary stat combination on this. It's sort of gross for every spec. I mean, it's Verse Mastery. It's also a lot of gold. The other option you have is a ring. I could have sworn there's a big haste ring too. I don't know wherever that one went. It's a lot of crit and a bit of mastery. You can have sockets on these rings. And the important thing to note about rings is that everybody wants them. Tanks, healers, DPS, whatever you're doing, everybody wants rings. And sockets are obviously big on rings. There are blue versions that you can buy from jewel crafters, and they're actually pretty good too. So if you're going to look at buying a BOE, I would say if these stats are what you're after, which, I mean, they're not bad. It's a lot of crit, which favors probably, Destro. I mean, it's okay for AF and Demo, to be fair. I'll keep an eye on rings, sockets going up price-wise. Now, there is one weapon here that is available to us. It's Ishtar's Severe Stiletto. This is the only haste mastery weapon that you can acquire from dungeon. Well, you can acquire pretty much at a good eye level in the game right now. There is no haste mastery staff or one-handed weapon in Mythic Plus. There's no haste mastery offhand. So, and plus, weapons have more intellect on them comparatively to, like a cloak going up like 6 eye levels or whatever. I guess 6 here, 7 here. So if you can get a Ishtar Severe Stiletto, you very well might end up wearing this into heroic progression for Castle Nathria, depending how fast your guild is going. Once again, I would not spend a whole lot on it, but if I was going to look at buying BOEs or targeting them, I'd look probably at this weapon if you have a decent offhand, or potentially a ring with a socket. Once again, this main hand does indeed require an offhand, and this is probably your best bet across the board from Theater of Pain. But it's still 100k gold, and getting the offhand can be a bit of a pain too, comparatively to something like the staff from. There's a handful of staves in the game from Tierna's side. There's one from like the Kali's Spire of Knowledge, or Kali's Spire of Knowledge. There's one from the other side, from the Mana Storm. So it's not going to make or break things. It'll be a slight power boost going into the raid if you want it for next week, whatever, what have you. The BOEs will also allow you to trade loot if you're running like guild groups, armor stacks, whatever, what have you, because they are 190 eye level, and the max loot you can get now in Mythic Zeros is 184. So TLDR and BOEs, they're impactful. Eye level is big, but I would not spend a crazy amount of gold on them because you're probably going to upgrade them pretty quickly, like the week of Heroic and Mythic Zeros, the Raid, or certainly the week after getting into Mythic Castle, Nathria. Thanks for watching, dudes. I hope this video gave you guys a better idea and just understanding of how each Warlock spec looks gearing-wise, stat-wise, what it prioritizes more than other stats, and just truly how powerful intellect is right now. I can't stress it enough. People ask what the most important stat is on stream, and I say intellect, and they get angry. Like, I'm not lying to you. It's that important. It is that impactful right now. We haven't seen intellect be this valuable in many expansions, and probably due to the stat squish and other things that happened, you know, heading from BFA into Shadowlands, it's very, very strong. But once again, there are some secondary stats that are front runners and outliers. You're looking at Destro, Demo, and AF. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. And also, let me know what you guys think of the spreadsheet and I guess the BIS gearing, the pre-raid BIS gearing. I wanted to have this video out the day before Shadowlands dropped, but then all the night phase stuff happened and the changes happened 3 hours before release and just sort of got pushed back. But hopefully heading into this week with loot trading and things being more relevant, more of a thing, hopefully it'll help a little bit for you guys. So once again, any weak ORS profiles or add-ons you see here, you can indeed grab on my Twitch for free. If you want to swing by, hang out, ask any questions, feel free to do so anytime. Thanks again, dudes, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.